Hey everybody, we are back. This is episode 3 of DearBands Live. I'm considering retitling this, renaming this, because I have some other ideas I was considering. I appreciate everybody that was asking about last week, because last week was Thanksgiving here. It was also my lovely wife's birthday, so I could not sneak away for an hour in the evening to do another episode. I just want to hop right into it because I've got some. I don't want to say I got someone special here because that could be taken many different ways. But I've got a good friend in the radio industry joining us today. I'm literally just reading off his Facebook page right now. He's a brand manager at Rock. Actually, going to start at the bottom here. Former brand manager at Rock 105. Former brand manager at Q 105, I think 0.7 or just 157. Former brand manager 97.7. Former brand manager at 102.1, or is it 102.1? The Wave. Brand manager at 97.9, Bob FM in Bloomington, and brand manager at Rock 96.7. I hear a knock at the door. And our good friend, Wes Styles. Hopefully I nailed that.
I feel like I just sent you my LinkedIn profile, and then that could have like covered everything.
I was looking at that, and I'm just like that because I want to say we really met in Vegas in 2018
Sometime
at the Rock Rage Radio Awards.
Sometime around there, I do recall us all hanging out during the Dead Set era, the run, if you will.
Yeah, like we'd met before that, but I feel like when we were in Vegas, which we could not afford to be there, but we decided we had to go. We couldn't miss it. Smart. But I remember bumping into you and your lovely wife, Lacey, when we were getting our press passes, and I was just thinking like, okay, this is good because we're already like saying hi to people that we know and recognize and stuff, and we all had a really good time that weekend.
Vegas is always a good time. That convention, which has morphed into multiple, it's been different names over the course of its career, but that's always a good time and always a great hang, no matter who's there, radio wise, band wise, especially like that year, you guys. I mean, it's always a great time, and you get exposed to so many good people, and you make some great friends. Case in point, look at us right now here talking.
Yeah, no, it was good. Well, that was the thing too. So remember, because I'm a spreadsheet person. As much as everyone thinks I sit around playing drums all day and writing songs, it's like I'm answering emails and looking at spreadsheets. And I remember management was like, "You guys should go," and I'm looking at the cost of, because we had to fly there, but there's no time for us to drive all the way up from Toronto to Vegas. And I was just looking at the numbers, and I'm just like, please be worth it. Please, like, not for networking purposes, but just like for fun. Because like there's a lot of time with band stuff where it's just like, as long as it's fun, it's worth it. If it's lack of a better word, if it's a nightmare, it's like I'd rather not go. I'd rather stay home and not have to figure out the finances for it. But no, it was awesome. And also too, like watching, and again, like you've been through quite a few stations. And like,
I don't know how to take that statement. No,
because people move around, and that's the thing. It's like I've paid more attention to like U.S. rock radio, I'd say the last 3 or 4 years, because I've been involved with it. But seeing people kind of bounce around to different stations and move from one place to the next, and it's like a lot of people seem to know each other. So a couple of times when we're like as musicians standing around and hearing people talk about stuff, it's like, I know people at labels that move around. I know, musicians that are sidemen that move around a lot. Everybody talks. So when I saw all the personalities, people at radio stations hanging out and talking, I was like, it's the same everywhere.
We're a tight knit group. Radio itself has gotten tighter over the years, unfortunately, especially in the time that I've been in the business. I've been in radio itself, paid. I'm using air quotes here. I've been around radio since I was 14. I'm 37 now. But I got paid officially in radio when I was 19. So I'm coming up on 20 years here in the next, couple of years. I'll be 20 years in the business. In that time that I've been in, I've seen it shift a lot in that time. So, I've seen it where we had a program director paid full-time on staff, along with a music director, an assistant program director, and these are all various jobs, but these people had a title on top of being on the air, or maybe they weren't on the air. There was all these positions. Now you look at most radio stations that are not in major markets, you see a majority of these people are program director, production director, on air / morning show. It's like the
multiple
job
hats.
Yeah, I wear, in my cluster, I probably wear about 6 or 7 hats. There's 6 or 7 different titles just on my one individual person.
and that's sorry.
Thank COVID, it's gotten worse. But you know what? I take it with pride, and I love what I do.
And it's just like that's just state of the industry, sort of thing. It's like that's what if you want to keep playing, like that's just what you need to kind of show up with.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, it's a similar thing in music. Like I've kind of gone off on a few bands about stuff where people are like, oh, I just want to make music and and play shows. It's like that's not good enough anymore. The Civilian, the band I had on 2 weeks ago, their drummer, he produces the stuff, he mixes it. He's really big into videography, and he does so many things, and he wears so many hats, but he's like loves it. And so like I see people like, and I wanted to make a comment. So you mentioned you started around 14, like you started kind of getting the doors open, because like you've posted pictures, and it's just like you look like a baby. You look so young in those pictures. But then I know other friends where they show some of the pictures of like where they got started, like, oh, this is me interviewing you too or something, and it's like them at 17. And they look like kids, and you're just like, that seems to be a common thread I've seen with people in radio.
Yeah, a lot of us, at least in lack of a better term, my generation and a little bit older in terms of radio, we got in very young. We got bit by that bug. I don't know what it was about me. About 11 years old, I got bit by the bug. I thought it was kind of cool. I remember asking my mom, I was like, I wonder what you got to do to get into radio. And obviously, I didn't come from an entertainment background family, so I was like, didn't know. And I got lucky because I had a friend of mine who, one of my best friends in middle school and high school, he was in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and his big brother was the music director for a local rock station in my hometown. And I had that inkling, that wanting to do it, so he brought me in and introduced me to him, and then from there, the floodgates opened, and I just never ever looked back. I have so many friends of mine from back in high school to go, oh, I remember you were always big in the radio, and you were one that actually chased your dream and are still doing it. I'm like, there was no stopping me. If I was staying in my hometown, cool, I was doing it. If I was leaving my hometown, I was still doing it. One way or the other, stopping me. This was happening. I was like any other, like any other musician. If you're chasing your dream, I'm gonna do it, and you're not stopping me. This is gonna happen.
No, and I half joke about my saying with that. It's like things work out or you die. It's like quit or die trying, or one of those things. But it's just like that's the way I've felt about it. Just keep focused on it, and you don't look like, it's nice to look back once in a while and like all the things that you may have accomplished up to that point, or like just the opportunities you've had and stuff. But like I'm constantly looking forward for opportunities and stuff. So no, I just think it's awesome because it's like that, like 20 years of being in a profession and a career. It's like no one can take that away from you, but someone that wants to get started today, it's like, that's not to say, because again, like real talk, like we can start podcasts online, like we can arrange playlists and stuff like that, but it's not the same as having all that experience. Because even like I was just doing the dishes upstairs after dinner, and I was laughing to myself. I'm like, I don't know if I should pretend I'm interviewing Wes, because Wes has interviewed like a bajillion people by this point, and to be like, wow, Lifer's a clown, and I don't know what he's talking about. But the thing
I
is,
was joking with my wife. On the flip side, I'm like, I'm used to doing what you're doing the other side. I'm the one who has to sit here with the notepad, which by the way now it's empty, but normally I have like 5.
I got like a couple notes, but nothing.
I usually have like 5 pages of stuff and of notes. And the way I do interviews is, and my wife, she knows I'm so strenuous about it and very retentive about it. Like I have a certain way that I want things to go, and a certain way that I list out I'm very particular about my interviews. We've sat down and done interviews before, but if you look at my sheet versus how you and I end up talking, it's night and day difference. But I overprep so bad that it's so funny, because I interviewed the guys in the there's a Nickelodeon documentary coming out next month called The Orange Years, And I had probably in this notepad, I'd say about 5 or 6 pages of notes. And then I went back and re-scripted out how I wanted it to flow. And then we sat down and did a 40-minute interview. And no joke, I probably used half, not even half of the notes, because they kept bringing up new things. I'm like, all right, we'll go here, we'll go here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's great. I love it. I'd rather that happen than have no prep whatsoever. Because in my very early career, my very first phone interview was Jared Leto of 30 Seconds to Mars. God awful phone interview, not because of him, but because of me. Wasn't really prepared, was nervous as all can be. First in-person interview was Zach Wilde. And again, horrible interview. Reason being was, at the time, my midday girl at the station I was working at, my hometown, she was supposed to do the interview. Zach showed up 3 hours late to the interview. And he was just casually doing the interviews as he was driving through our region to go to a Rolling Stones concert. He wasn't even on tour. He was just going to a Rolling Stones show. So he was doing radio promo. So I ended up getting stuck doing the interview, but I had her notes. They weren't my notes. And the interview, and I still have the interview. Now, mind you, I'm 20, 21 at this time. So still relatively young and doing my job in terms of being on air and doing interviews. I have the interview on the hard drive here in the basement, but like I've gone back and listened to it in years since, and I'm like, I can't even get through it because it's so bad.
Well, just having that process, though, you know, and one of my things too, with especially with the way things have gone the last 6 months, where bands stress over trying to get their video content perfect and whatnot, and I'm like, just hit record.
Yeah.
You know, even the first DearBands live, it was just like, I had a buddy I was chatting with in the morning. I'm like, I'm just gonna get some graphics and just start it today. I don't know. And then I ended up interviewing someone while they were doing dishes. My buddy Luke hopped on, and he's like, I'm like, do you want to interview? Because I made a couple of records with him, and he's like, yeah, sure. And we had a great chat for an hour, you know, sort of thing. But again, like back where you're talking about starting, it's just like, just get your feet wet, just get in there, because like, if I want to say too, like when you start something and it's awesome, I think you have this really false sense of like excellence, and usually it's like all downhill, backwards. It's like all downhill from there, and then you got to get good again. But it's like, you know, I think it's good to start that way too, because also I feel like that interview, you know, if you thought it was really bad, it could have made you quit, you know. It could have made someone quit. Like, I don't want to embarrass myself.
Yeah, there was a middle ground where there was like elements. I'm like, okay, some of this is good. I see where I can improve. It wasn't god awful to the point where I went home like, that's it, I quit, I'm done, I'm never. Radio is not for me. What was I thinking? No, it was never that. But there was definitely some stuff I learned from him, which, you know, I picked up and started working into what I'm doing now. And even with my video podcast, that's where, you know, it worked up even to this now. But still, there are times I have bad interviews to this day. I won't say the person's name, but I recently, within this past year of 2020, I had a phone interview with a particular comedian. And in my prep work, I always like to go back and listen to past interviews with somebody's, and I like to pick up on nuances, things that like I look for, like, okay, they're really big on talking about this, they don't like talking about that, and certain things where I can see this is where they turn and this is where they go bad for somebody. And there was one line this person always said in every one of their interviews when it went bad, and this person pulled it on me, and I'm like, done, we're over. And I tried saving it because I was working towards where they wanted to go anyways in the conversation. Like, I had a plot, I knew where I was going, but this person wanted to get there before I could. And they said that one line, I'm like, he was done. Just yep. The interview never saw the light of day. I still have it saved, but the interview never saw the light of day. I never used it.
And that was for your personal, or is that for
the radio? No, it was for radio. It was supposed to be on air, be used on air, but again, it was never good enough, and that I just didn't want to use it. So I'm like, you know what? Nah, it's all right.
I didn't know that was a thing. I just figured, like, when you get content and get interviews, like, what you get's what you get. I didn't think I didn't know you had a choice.
It's like, they want you to use it, but The thing I hate is the cattle call interviews, and they still happen, unfortunately, where you get, doesn't matter if it's a band, a celebrity, comedian, TV, movie star, whatever have you. If you get the cattle call interviews where they have like a 2-hour window and you have a 10-minute slot, and then they do the 10-minute slot with you, take a 2-minute break, do another 10-minute slot, keep moving. Well, if you are guy 6 or 7 or 12 in that row, if guy 1, 2, or 3 or 4 did something to make them mad, or they've answered the same question 7 times now, then they're cashed out. They're done. They've checked out. So it's like, all right, whether you're asking that same question or not, they are mentally checked out because they just don't care now. So it happens. It still happens.
I can imagine, and I'm laughing to myself because I can imagine, like, all right, I'm up next, and then someone just leaves them on a real sour note, and you're like, awesome. Awesome.
I've gotten them. Well, and the big festivals, like with Rock on the Range, now Sonic Temple, all these other major festivals, it happens. We have those big for radio. We have those big media tents, and a lot of times it happens. No matter what member of the band you get, the band gets split up and they go out their ways, and all these people, and whether it be an internet radio station or a terrestrial radio station or a satellite radio station, whatever outlet gets them, and they go all around. And by the time they get to you, depending on where you are on their list, if they're cashed out and just checked out at that point, then you could have the greatest questions ever. You could have the most earth-shattering thing in the world. It doesn't matter. I'll give you a good example. I had was it? It was I think it was Tom Maxwell of Hell Yeah. I want to say it was Tom of Hell Yeah. Hold on, I'm looking it up real quick, and
it's all good. It's like, I just wanted to share this. Kelly put a message into the chat here.
Okay.
Saying, I wanted to be a radio personality from grade school through high school. Never happened for me professionally though. I'm always curious because like everyone has those things, like, I want to be a race car driver, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a movie star, and it's just like, I think it's interesting. Let's check in the chat here.
Yeah, oh, hey, I can see the chats too. Yay!
Yeah. Jeremy Isbell says hey. Well, he says West, but that means hey.
What's up, Penny? By the way, I see Penny's in the chat. Penny's an old listener from the Springfield, Illinois days.
Ah.
Penny, I got a great story about. Wait a minute, is it Penny? I think I got a great story about Penny. I think I do. It involves the old. I shouldn't say old. It's still a venue down in Pops down in St. Louis. Tom Maxwell. So Tom and I were interviewing at Rock on the Range. During our interview at Rock on the Range in this particular year, Tom drops the bombshell that Hell Yeah on their upcoming album is doing a cover of I Don't Care Anymore. And he drops it with me, doesn't say anything to anybody else, drops it with me and says that in this interview, they're using an old Dimebag Darrell guitar riff in the recording that's going to get released. This is the first news that's ever happening, and we get done doing the interview, and I'm like, well, thanks, man, for that. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm not supposed to say anything, but I felt like pissing off the band, management. They don't want us talking about it. I'm like, well, dude, this is going to be all over everywhere by the time I get this up. This is great. I appreciate it. Fast forward a couple months later, I'm like, all right, he and I had a great rapport in this interview. Let's do another one. So I reach out to management and like, dude, let's do another one. We do another interview, and he just wasn't into this one this time. So I'm like, all right, well, it's not an every time thing. Not like, where you and I right now, like we just are friends, and we always have a great time doing an interview or just chat. Not everyone's that way, so you got to prep for that just in case. And Tom's a great guy. No disrespect meant by what I'm saying. It's just I had an expectation in my head, and it wasn't met going into that second interview.
Well, that's got to be tough. Like I don't want to say going in with expectations, but I think because there is often times where there's that professional relationship in entertainment where just, again, like people have roles to play, and I feel like when you become friends, not to say you add a little bit of leeway to certain things, but it's a little more casual. And if one party's not kind of there yet, or I think the other side too, when like one party's definitely there and you're like, I just got here, I don't know what's happening, it can be a bit of a thing. But yeah, well, I think sorry, not to Like
No,
I
right,
feel,
sorry.
I know, I just feel like with I know on the artist side, like there's a lot of variables with a band, because bands can be having the best time of their lives before they come in. They could have just had it out at the hotel room or in the van or in the bus,
Mhm.
and then they got to go in, and it's like not knowing what you get, because it's one thing to just be professional where you can just go in and just be on sort of thing, but on your side, like again, don't have to name any names, but like have you had interviews where you just wanted to, like, is everybody okay?
Oh,
Like, do we want to do this today? Or is this like,
oh no, I've had those interviews. I've had interviews where we've had that issue, most certainly. I've had interviews. I won't name a band name in this one, but I'll
no,
give you.
never need to, yeah.
No, I'll give you two examples. One was a fun one. One was a horrible one. This one was the horrible one. So I'm doing this phone interview. And we may have had this chat before. I may have told the story off the side between you and I before, but I had this phone interview and set up. This singer of this band calls me, and they're setting up for a show to come to town, and pre-taped interview, not live on air. So he calls and like, all right, man, give me a second. I got to set up the recording device so that we can roll. Okay, cool. While I'm off the side of the microphone, setting up the 360 system, which was a digital recorder we used at the time, I hear on the phone, "Hey, man, yo, man, come over here and hit this bong. Yo, seriously, come over here. I just hit this thing. Come over here and take this bong from me. Take it from me because I got to do this interview, man." And I'm like, and by this point, before this happened, like I had already hit record. So I sent it to dude. This is what, like, legit. You got to tell your boy he might want to hit it and not talk about it when he calls the radio station.
Get that done before you go into work.
Right. I was like, all right, fine. All right, that's no problem.
I want to ask, could you tell, like, the substance in his bloodstream, did it carry on throughout the interview?
It was just
did it slow down or anything?
It was just a bad interview. But yes, no, it was funny. It was just great. There was another one. I again won't mention the band name, but they were sponsored by a particular liquor brand at the time.
No.
And they show up to the interview live on location at the concert venue that we were at. They bring said bottle with them, and they crack it open at the beginning of the interview, and they start pouring shots. Now, we pre-taped the interview, thank God, before it went to air. And we killed, it was a smaller bottle, but we killed this bottle during the course of the interview. And it might have been maybe 5 or 6 minutes. Take all the members of the band, myself in there, a couple other people around us, but we killed the bottle. The problem is you have like 4 mics going on at the same time, 2 separate channels. And there's F-bombs happening while the conversation's here on mic 1 and 2, F-bomb happening on mic 4. Well, it's all picked up across one channel going back to the studio. So the board op calls me and goes, "There's no way I can air this because you guys will be in the middle of a sentence. Somebody's dropping an F-bomb on mic 4. And it's like, oh, the album's coming up and beep." It's like, we just can't use it. It's funny in the end. I thought it was hilarious. We couldn't use it, but it was just great and a funny memory for me down the line.
There might be a time and a place for some of those, but yeah, I could see on radio, because that's one of the things with Guys in Dead Set, and obviously the Tense Machine too. Just reminding people, not that we swear like sailors when it's just us, but like reminding ourselves, like, don't swear. Like, you don't need to swear. You don't need what SpongeBob would call sentence enhancers. We don't need those.
I like that.
We don't need those. So no, it's a thing. It's a thing with like being, and obviously being on our best behavior for radio. But another,
I sometimes swear, but it's mostly off air. But if I do it off air, I do what I call the Walmart version of myself, where like, oh man, this is something right now, man. What the f- is going on right now? And my 11-year-old will look at me like,
it's a habit. it's a habit.
Uh-huh.
And like swearing is a habit, and it's just like, and I subtly, you know, the guys are probably gonna call me out now. And I subtly try to like take it out of the culture. And again, it's one thing. Again, if it's burger rage or something, just let the emotions fly. Just get out of your system. But for the most part, we don't need to enhance our senses. So
Can I just say something real quick? Because
yes.
burger rage has become something that is just a long-standing joke now between, you know, all of Tent and with me now. But it has now become a long-standing thing now in the Styles family. We'll say something in the house like, "Oh, this leads to blank sadness," and somebody, whether it be my wife or my stepson, will chime in, and then that leads to blank rage. So if I'm like, "Oh, well, now that just leads to, you know, casserole sadness." Well, that leads to the casserole rage. This is now a new thing in the Styles family, thanks to you guys.
It's now a like educational or teaching aid. You know, it's just everyone. It's a universal. It's like everyone seems to understand that. It's like burger sadness and burger rage. It's like, yeah, I could get that.
It's a real thing, and
it is.
It is, and you must learn the ways of it so that you can get away from it.
Actually, it's kind of a good segue with the interview process and talking, like people on your side of the fence as radio personalities, and so seamless how you can talk about something and just reduce those gaps and maintain, like I'm kind of, I don't know if it's sound weird, but like maintain the volume and dynamics of your voice so well. It's, I don't know, it's like I, as someone who's recorded vocals for 20 years, like I pick up on that stuff, or it's just like that tone of voice. And I did a quick thing with Oz a couple days ago, and just again we were chatting for a bit before, just casually, and then like, gotta put that down, then the radio voice fires up and it just goes. And it's like when we're doing interviews with you, it's like we're sitting over, chat for a bit, laugh about stuff. Wes is on radio now, and there's the radio voice that's there. Like, how you mentioned you're starting, you know, in your teens. At what point did you really feel like, I'm good at this, I'm good at my job?
I don't know that there was ever a defining moment. You know, back again when I was 14, the guy I had training me, Dom, he allowed me, thankfully, to get into a production studio at the station, WNCD back in Youngstown, Ohio, 93.3. Shout out to the Wolf. But he would allow me to get in the production studio while he would be doing music logs or on the air. And I could go in there and just hone my craft and work on it. It wasn't ever going to see the light of day and be on air, but I could go in there and practice doing breaks and, you know, sit there. This is old school. Before technology was really big on technology, I'd sit there with an old cassette tape, 2 CD players, and would seg up the end of the song, seg up the next song, and would sit there with a full board in front of me and would do break to break and hit and fire off the hotkeys to get the song going, or the commercial break, and would do that. That's how I kind of started doing it. And then over the years, I've had great teachers who took the time. You know, that's one of the big things too for me now, especially over the last couple of years, is that if I see somebody that's willing to take the time in the business, I will take the time back and teach them, because I had somebody who believed in me and took the time to train me up, because without them, I'm not here. I haven't been able to do those journeys and, you know, win those awards or meet you and do the things that I've done without those people. So giving back's always good and something I love to do. But without those people training me, teaching me, showing me those ways, the one thing I firmly always believe, and I tell anybody, is the day you think you know everything, quit. Just quit. Walk away. Because if you think you know everything, you know absolutely nothing. Walk away. Just don't anymore.
No, you with the class that I teach, and I kind of half joke about something similar like that. I say, like, every 3 months I'm reminded that I suck. Like every 3 months I learn something, and I'm just like, oh, like this is a thing.
There are days that I sit here and work from home, and there are days where I'll be producing something or doing a taping of my voice, and I will sit here and I stop and I go, I suck. Why am I do this? Like, why am I getting paid? Who hired me? Why? Like,
how many wrong things happened for me to get to this point?
Yeah, like there are just days where I'll sit here and I kind of have that exhaustive defeat out of my voice, and like I can't mentally just get through the day or put together a sentence or put imaging together that needs to be on a promo to get onto the air. Like there's just some days, man, and it happens, and especially now more frequently thanks to COVID and working from home and being in this studio. You really can't see nothing but the two walls here, but I have no windows in my basement. I cannot see the light of day literally during the day while I work downstairs. So, like, I literally am working in a cell, and yeah, take that for what you will. There are times
stay here, work.
Right.
Oh no, that's. So roll back a little bit. The idea of like mentors and any, and especially in entertainment or any trades or any profession, to have someone who can kind of take you under their wing and go, because I was lucky in school like that, because I went to school for audio engineering, and one of the main engineers there, he would teach the class and he would come over and be like, here's what you need to know. And like I kind of got extra stuff there, and I met other people through that. And my main mentor, Jeff Delzio, like I learned tons just watching him, and he was the first person that was like, because he was at Sony at the time, Sony ATV, and he's like, anytime you want to come out here, come on out. So I was out there every single day, and I was out there to the point where I'm like, I'm gonna call his bluff on this, and I'm gonna be out here until he gets sick of me. And he never told me to go home except for one vocal session where the artist didn't really want anybody else around, and he apologized, and I'm like, the Sony cafeteria's been feeding me every day. I've been hanging out watching rock stars do stuff. So like I'm totally cool to not, to take a day off, because I put all my classes like at 8 a.m. until early afternoon, and then I'd be at Sony until like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Get home and then get back up.
My very early on in my career, again, like I said, around 19, I got in and got paid part-time. That's when I started counting my paydays, is when I actually got a paycheck. Part-time doing a weekend shift on a station, that's pay. But at that time, like around 18 years old when I started getting in, and then into 19, I had gotten let go from a job that I had at the time, and my PD, it was like, well, come around, we'll try to get you some extra hours and stuff like that. I'm like, same thing. I'm like, whether you're paying me for this, better be ready, because you are gonna get sick of me, boy. But then around that place, certain people would take to me and show me certain things. And I mean, I learned web graphics on Photoshop and how to do certain things. And in one particular realm, working with, Adobe and again with web and the automation system that we had there at that station at the time. And so learning all the facets, and that's how I've grown from there, because thankfully they taught me, like, you can't just be on air. You have to be more than just on air. And I always kind of had the inkling to want to do more than just being on Airtown. I always kind of want to be the program director, not for, I get to pick the music. I wanted to be more. Yeah, I knew there was more to it. It was more, the overall scheme of being the brand manager and being able to think bigger thoughts and grand scheme and stuff like that. So there was more to it than just, I get to be in charge. Ha ha. So it was more so just the real big, I get to do more with the business and be a part of that. That's what I always wanted to from day one.
I think that's the rude awakening for some people when they start moving up the ranks, and they think that, and I always refer to hands on hips, they just think they're just in charge now. Like, I'm in charge and I just get to call the shot. But like how much of, this is more for me, how much of what you do is picking the music? Like how much of your workday goes into like figuring out the playlists and what, because like I don't know how often things get changed or like how things come in and come out. And
well, I mean, typically no matter what the station, there is there's the weekly reporting in general. So you can change weekly if you want, or you can, as we typically call it, a freeze. If you freeze the playlist in terms of the currents, you don't add anything, you don't move anything out, you don't drop anything. So it just depends. You look at stuff depending on how you look at things, your resources that you have, what research you have. If you look at streaming numbers, if you look at other radio stations that are similar to you, and whatever type of research you have available to you to make those decisions. Every station is different. Every PD is different in terms of how they make that decision. So it all comes down to that individual. I have, from where I was when I started making these decisions on a regular basis in my job to where I am now, and how I make those decisions has changed because the world's changed and the way that we consume music has changed. So I've changed in terms of how I do it. And to be quite honest, there have been so many times in my career that I can't even count now at this point that I thought, oh, this song is going to be a hit. Or, man, this song sucks. It's never going to do anything. And then it goes number one.
Number one, yeah.
Or like, nah, these guys will never be anything. Case in point, 3 Days Grace. No disrespect to 3 Days Grace, but when I Hate Everything About You came out, I know all the connections to 3 Days Grace. And that's why
wait for the door to bust open.
You're right.
What's up? What's going on? Seriously.
But I'm saying back in the day when I Hate Everything About You came out, like right when it came out, and that surge of the new metal or whatever the hell it was at that point, you want to call it, came out, I was just kind of like, and I wasn't making the decisions at that point, but I was just kind of, okay, all right, it is what it is. But then it went big, it turned something into big, and then they became something big, and I became a believer. Again, I was wrong. I admit I was wrong.
There's nothing wrong with that too, because
that's like one of the biggest examples I give people of like, I made the wrong call. We played the song in the station I was at. I was not in control, but at the time I'm like, I don't see it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, and I don't think you're hoping that it fails to say that you're right. But like a lot of music, a lot of putting singles out and promoting things, we're just placing bets. And the thing is like, I don't know if you've got that much to gain if something doesn't work out and you're like, okay, I'm not really hearing it, but it took off and good for them. But there's got to be the flip side too, where like you think something's really got legs and it just doesn't seem to catch on, and you're just like, what is, like, really? Is my radar off here? Like,
there's been times when I was programming a station called WXQR in Greenville, North Carolina, Rock 105. Down there. Shout out to Mika, the PD down there right now, or LA Rock as she calls herself. But it like there was times where so many times I would think a song was going to do something and be something big, and you're like, it's got the legs, it has to, and it starts to take off, and then it just fizzles and does nothing. You're like, what the hell? Like,
there's a lot of variables. And bands don't realize that, and back with Dead Set, like I think like a Nightmare did well also because we were on the road and we were accessible, and that was the big part of the business model we were working with, is get in the van, we'll just tough it out for better part of 3 months straight, like basically starting. And it was like, just be accessible. If someone needs us to be somewhere to play to 5 people or to stop by a radio station. Still one of my favorite stories from that tour was we could not get in. I can't remember what the radio station was in Cincinnati, but we couldn't get through to anybody in there. But we still had the address for the radio station. Bands, don't do what I'm gonna say we did. But no,
here, don't do this.
Don't do what I'm gonna say we did. But we just drove up, and like Reed will just, like, well, not say Reed, but like the guys in the band will just trust me on certain things. And I'm like, there's the building, the radio station's in there, let's try to go get an introduction with somebody. So I'm like, Reed, let's go. And Reed's just like, okay. And we just start walking towards the building. The building, like, you get in, you needed a pass to get into the elevator sort of thing.
Right.
Someone else gets in there. What floor are you guys going to? We're going to 8th floor. He hits the button for us. All right, we're good. We get in, and then someone was going to the radio. We saw the radio station, the doors there, and someone was going in, and they held the door for us. And like Reed and I just look at each other and like, we're in. And then we asked.
Lucky on that one.
Oh yeah, no, it was one of those things where like everything lined up, and we ended up. I can't remember who we. Again, this is the terrible part. I can't remember who we ended up meeting, but we asked for the PD at the front desk. They came out. And like, they'd obviously got our emails, but they'd given us even though we're in Cincinnati, they'd given us the California no. And they were surprised we got in there. And again, we don't mean any harm. And it's like, it's one of those kind of Airhead Spinal Tap moments where you just walk at the doors and see what happens. Like the worst is they call security on you. But even then, they'd probably laugh it off because we're not going to put up a fight or anything. We're not trying to take over the station. But yeah, no, it's just,
I had no, it wasn't the band that showed up, but I was running a AAA station in Springfield at the time called Alice at 97.7. Station doesn't exist anymore. It got dissolved, but at the time we were running the station, it was what was known as a AAA format, and we had a woman show up at the front desk, and typically at that time with just in general, because I was still kind of new, I think at the time, if anybody showed up try to pitch me music and I didn't know them or know they were coming, I'd be like, just if the front desk girl called, just leave the stuff at the desk. I'm not coming up. Like I got a lot to do. I like legitimately got a lot to do in my day. Leave me be. This woman would not leave. So I go up and it's this older woman. She is I believe the aunt, I want to say, of a band who's not even from the area. She shows up to talk to me about her nephew's band. Doesn't have a CD. Okay, but has her iPad with her and wants to play me the song. And I'm like, an email would have worked so much better in this situation for you. And by the way, another thing, bands who are watching, because this is called DearBands, please do me one favor. If you think of a band name and it's hard to pronounce and you think you're cool, you're not cool. Okay, you're not. It doesn't help you.
Oh, we could talk about band names. We could talk about band names.
Oh, that's just the one thing I can never get around. I got an email, I want to say last week, and I don't remember if it went to alternative or AAA, but there was a band name that I looked at, and I'm like, I am not the master of the English language, though I speak it for a living. My wife will make fun of me all the time for that. But I looked at it, and I'm like, I can't pronounce that. I don't even know how the hell to pronounce that. I'm tweeted about it. I'm like, if you think you're cool because you named your band something that's hard to pronounce, you're not cool. You're not. In fact, you know what? You're going to my delete. delete. You're out of here.
Either not cool or too cool for me, because I don't get it. I don't get what's going on with the band.
No, I know. Like, I'm sorry. It just doesn't work. Give me something that's easy to remember. You know what I mean? And that's just it. Give me something that's easy to remember. It doesn't have to be the easiest thing to say, but make it easy to remember. You know? I mean, come on. Not that hard.
It's funny you're bringing this up, because when Civilian was on 2 weeks ago,
okay,
I had a chat with them because they were kind of looking at their band name, because the way that it's spelled, they're just like, people don't know how to pronounce it. I'm like, my other way of thinking, it's like, you actually have a filter for core fans, because your core fans will know how to pronounce your band name. So when someone's like, oh, like, I love Civilian, it's like, oh, I don't know what that is. But when someone's like, no, I love Civilian, it's like, okay, they're a core fan. So there's a little bit of a filter there. But when you're trying to make new fans and they can't pronounce the name or understand what's going on, or it doesn't stick with them,
that alienates that new fan, because if you can't pronounce it, or you're keeping them out because now, you know, the core fans are too cool and they won't welcome you in. You know what I mean? Because, you know,
I hear you.
There's still that factor, I think, to this day. No matter what the band is, you have that core fan base that's still cool and hip to the band. Doesn't matter what the band is. It could be Five Finger Death Punch. It could be.
You remember?
It doesn't matter who it is. You know what I mean? From the coolest, from the biggest band in the world to the hippest band in whatever genre you want to talk about. You know, they're still too cool of a core, and they're still going to alienate the proximity. In radio, we call, you know, the P1s your core audience. Then there's the P2s, your secondary ring, and then there's your P3s, which are your fringe fans who come in. You're like their third option on the presets. It's like the biggest thing you don't want to do as a band is make that P3 not feel welcomed in your group at all.
That is excellent advice.
You want them to come in, whether they like one song, two songs, if they're just now finding out about you for whatever reason. You want them to feel welcome. Not be, you know, don't make them feel out because they can't pronounce your band name, or because now they're finding out about you because your single's starting to take off and it's off a third album that just now all of a sudden fans are finding out about. You're like, welcome them. Don't alienate anybody because you're just now taking off.
Oh, that's excellent advice. So I always think of that P1 circle as the core fans, and then the P2 as the casual, and like, I don't even have a P3 type rank, because to me it's
Right.
like those. I guess those to me are like the fans you're trying to convert through touring or through radio play, or like you're just trying to grab their ears that way.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask, when you brought up the whole thing with 3 Days Grace, because I remember back in high school, a buddy was like, "You've got to hear this band." That band was Nickelback, and it was before it was cool to hate on them.
Right.
And I'm like, no, it sounds good. Like, I was into other stuff at the time, but he had his finger on the pulse of a lot of rock stuff and modern rock stuff. Like before it was like even Fuel, like he was onto that like way before anybody else, sort of thing. Um, Nickelback, what was that on your radar when you first got it?
Nickelback, when I was getting into radio around the time that the second or if you want to call it the second album dropped, that was the one with How You Remind Me. That's when we really started breaking big here in America. That's when I found out about them. So I've known them since then, and they've been a part of my career almost every step of the way from there. I've never been one of those people that are like, oh, I gotta hate on them. You know, I tell everyone, no matter what, I will pay for, because I work in radio, I can get a ticket to almost any show for free. But they're one of the few bands that, they're one of those bands that I will pay to go see, no matter what. If they're on tour, I'm paying for a ticket because they put on that damn good.
It's ridiculous.
Show. Right. I tell people that.
It's really good.
Hate on them all you want.
Go to the show.
Go to the show. It's going to change your mind. Like, and all those people, like, there are so many guys in the rock radio world that hate on them. And I'm talking about program directors, on-air jocks, and all that junk. It's like, do you realize that band has crossed over and brought in a new audience to rock? Like, why are you hating on the fact that they could bring somebody, again, a P2 or P3 to your radio station? They cross over. Like, same thing with Creed. I get to a certain degree why people hate on Creed a little bit because of certain things that happen with that band.
Yeah.
Of course. But as a whole, who introduced a whole new generation, a whole new crowd, multiple formats to rock during their time? Creed. Who sold over 30 million records on an independent label? Creed. And you're going to tell me you're going to hate on them?
Yeah, you're going to say that and that they suck, and you're just like, no, they don't suck.
Go right ahead. They're too cool for the room. Let me tell you, go ahead and have fun with your black T-shirt there and your 500 cap room. Have fun.
I think it was 2012. Nickelback opened the Junos here. For anyone listening that's in States, Junos are the Canadian Grammys. And people were hating on them. They were hating on the idea that Nickelback was playing this thing. And my wife was there, and I'm just like, just wait until the reaction, because they've got to open the show, because they can't get them set up the way that they can get a lot of other kind of indie Canadian sounding bands. And they start their set, huge percussive cannon, pyro, and it's awesome, and everyone's losing their minds, and all of a sudden all the haters are just like, no, this is the greatest thing right now. This is the best. This is ice cream. This is chocolate. This is everything you wanted in life in 3.5 minutes. And they're unapologetic about it. They're just like, no, we're here to have fun.
Yeah.
We're here to have fun. It's music. And that was the thing with Chad on several interviews. He's just like, come to a show. Come see us. He's just like, even if you think we suck, come see us. It's fun. Like, it's a rock show.
It is one of the, and they are some of the nicest guys in the whole world. I saw
humble.
Hinder opened up for them on a big shed tour, and shed is referred to. It's a term in the industry referring to an outdoor amphitheater. That's just a term in the business, shed. But it was a shed tour at the time. I forget what album it was, but it was Nickelback and Hinder and somebody else. I can't remember who. But I just remember after the show, we're all backstage as being the Hinder guys, and Chad set up a tiki bar. Outside of the bus, and it didn't matter if you were road crew, band guest, any band for that matter guest, come up to the tiki bar, hang out, drink, like, and I'm just some Joe Schmo radio guy, friend of Hinder, and he's like, come on up, man. Yeah, what's your name, dude? Oh, Wes, how you doing? I'm Chad. How you doing? Come on up. And he's just pouring drinks and shooting the S. It's just like, nicest guy in the whole world. I can't hate on that.
Well, like, what good is it going to do for him to be negative towards people and leave people with a bad impression?
Right.
And dare I say, like, even if it wasn't sincere, you probably still had fun and you still had a positive review of everything.
Exactly.
Why not make sure people have a good time? And it's just, because I run into people in music where it's just like, they're negative about things, and that energy, like, that's contagious too. And it's like, cause yeah, there's been a couple people where like they don't get off the bus, and not to say you always have to get off the bus, but it's like they don't, and and you don't always have to go make friends with everybody, but like go see what's going on. I can actually to bring it way back where you're talking about early on with your mentorship and like being able to go up in places and just get in. It's those collisions. It's like if you don't leave your house, if you don't go and create those collisions, and maybe Chad having that tiki bar outside his bus, it's like there's ground zero for all of collisions. If people want to go in, like it's easy icebreaker for anyone that wants to come up and chat and talk and introduce themselves. And that's probably how you're going to make more friends.
I loved you guys in the Dead Set tour. One of the last times I saw you was in Peoria at the Limelight, or the former Limelight. I forget what it was called at the time.
The Christmas show? Was that
yeah, it was a Christmas show. But you guys had a fake drink that looked like it was poured out over one of your things. And it's just like, if you want to talk about the perfect way to strike a conversation, whether that person is going to buy a piece of merch or not, there it is. See?
No, this is the different. The other one was a Pepsi, but we got this one on the Tense Machine tour. And this one's pretty impressive too. Yeah, but it's a conversation starter.
Whether they buy a piece of merch or not, you made that touch. It's a touch point. You're talking to the person. Again, whether they buy a piece of merch or not, or they shrug you off, it doesn't matter. You're making a touch point and you're talking to them. I mean, just be conversational, be personal. I tell everybody in radio that, like, one of the things, I joke all the time that I hate dealing with crowds, but I will be out and I will talk to everybody. I will shake a hand, and
pre-COVID, you'll shake a hand.
Yeah, exactly. Pre-COVID. We had a Christmas show right before in December last year. Obviously before all the COVID stuff happened. The first Christmas show I had, or first major show I had for this rock station, Rock 96.7, and I'm out in the crowd. I'm bouncing around. I'm dancing, having a good time, and just striking up, energy with the crowd, because that's what you got to do. They are the audience. I'm with them. I want to make sure that I always tell people, I'm like, in radio, you want to be that person that the listener wants to have a drink with, that they can approach you no matter where you are at any given point in time. Certain instances excluded, obviously. Or, you don't want them to go, hey, I know you.
Not now.
Here's my cola check, but you get what I'm saying. But it's like, you want to be able to be approachable at any given point in time. You always want them to come up and talk to you. Message me on social media. I'll message you back and talk with you. Let's have a chat. It's a community. Without you, the station doesn't survive. Without you, the band doesn't survive, So it's like, we're all a community. This is all us together as one. So let's talk. There's never any ego, and if I ever come across as ego, I might have a bad day, and I'm sorry. I don't try to come off as ego. I really don't. But
there's confidence. There's definitely a line between ego and confidence.
Yeah. Well, even in general, some people do have bad days. It just happens. You know what I mean? There's just you have a bad day. Boss said something to you. You wake up on the wrong time. Drink hasn't kicked in. Things happen. But I honestly make it a point to try not to have a bad day. I always try to make it out into the crowd, hang out with everybody. Shake hands, high five, thank them for coming out. The folks down at QLZ in Springfield can definitely attest to that. Whenever we had an acoustic show, whenever we had a Christmas show, whatever the case was, I always tried to be out in the crowd and be around the people. The only time you never really saw me out in the crowd was at the Illinois State Fair shows, because there's like 16,000 people and you can't move in the crowd. So I'm like, because I'm never going to get back to where I need to be.
Got a quick question here.
Yeah.
From our friend Jeremy as well. Spring Fling interview 2018 in Peoria with Anna and Dane over Kenny's tots, as in tater tots.
Tater tots.
Anna thought Dane was instigating something bad about the tots. Anna was upset and had the death look. I do remember that a little bit, because Dane wasn't into tater tots, and I guess Anna was into tater tots, and there was an issue. Dane's a pizza guy, so...
I know.
Yeah. Wes, has anyone got under your skin in an interview? Has anyone actually tried to push your buttons? Don't have to use any names.
Yeah, they have. Whether it was intentional or not, I've had some bad interviews, and people who just were not interested in being there. And you try to do the interview and they're just not into it ever the whole time you're doing it. You're like, and I literally got done with that interview and I turned the mics off and I looked at the person and go, what was that all about?
So you called them out on it.
Like, yeah, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, literally one word answers to everything I just asked you. What was that about? Like, seriously, like, we're trying to sell your album. We're trying to sell the show tonight. Like, what was this all about? There's been times where, like, sarcasm has come out from the interviewer, or the interviewee, excuse me, during the interview. Again, like I said, those points were that one person I interviewed, and I knew there was a line coming, and they hit that line. You're like, yep, this is over with. I try to always look for those things, but it happens. And there are those people who will purposely try to push those lines. There are people out there who, you know, in the interviews, and this goes back to, for all the bands out there, listen, you're going to get asked the same question 20,000 times. It's going to happen. But guess what? The people listening to that radio station, to that podcast, haven't heard that answer yet, because they're not going to go out and they're not going to get that same, they're not going to go out and search the damn answer. They're just not. So you know what? Go ahead and answer the question. Whether it might be the dumbest, mundane thing in the whole world, answer the damn question correctly. Because I interviewed, and I'm not going to name names. I interviewed somebody and I was like, listen, I know you hate interviews. And they kind of chuckled. I'm like, I know you do. I'm going to make this as painless as possible, but work with me here.
No, but that's being real though. And the thing too with those questions for bands that are listening, those questions that you get over and over and over again, it's no different than, in my opinion, the response is no different than playing the same song over and over and over again. So get a good response and work off of that, because you're right. It's like the listeners in that area, it's new to them. So why would you give a one-word answer? Why would you sound kind of cold or kind of like not interested in being there? You're not going to pull anyone into that P3 circle, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, you're not even going to get them close. So.
No, and I've met people who, not even people that I've interviewed, but just people in general, in bands and artists and everything in general, who are like, oh yeah, you know, if I hear the same question, I just start making stuff up. You know, and then seeing if it shows up later somewhere in like an article or Wikipedia. It's just like, okay, yeah, that's fun for you, but it's not fun for the person that's doing it. You know what I mean? Like, if
you're ruining it for them.
Outlandish junk, that's not fun for that person. They might have spent some time on the interview, or they're new to it. I mean, God, I feel bad for Jared Leto with that first interview from me. It was horrible on my part. Kudos to him for trucking through those 10 minutes and he held it like a champ, and he went through it with me. But man, it was bad. But he didn't. I know he didn't.
He didn't bail on you.
With me.
Yeah, no, that's the thing too. Like, we've had long chats about people in the industry, and it's like people that are still here. We think they genuinely wish the bands well. They wish the artists well. They want to see everyone do well. No one's like, yeah, I want to spend my time working with people that I think are going to fail. Like, that's not a good use of my time. So like when you are interviewing a band, it's in your best interest to make the band sound great, to make them shine and make sure the answers are good and make everything feel casual. Because some of these people, like, you've never met them before, but just that banter and that rapport, it's like you're on the same team. Yeah. And so when you hear crappy answers, you're just like, yeah, as you're saying, work with me. Like,
I'm here to promote you, and yet,
yeah,
there are people out there. The interviewer, you know, somebody who's in my shoes, is out for themselves, who makes the interview about themselves. That's something I train anybody who I work with. Like, it's not about you. Take yourself out of it. Make it about the person you're talking to. But again, there are those people out there who make it about them. And I get, if you get that person, you know, in your shoes, Mike, you might mess with them, because at that point you're like, well, this isn't fun anymore. You know, this I want to talk about. What are we talking about? Like, literally, like, what is this? Maybe I can get that instance. But in general, if someone is asking you legit questions, back down for a second, think about it, and work with them on it. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of the reason why too. Like, I do a lot of research into my stuff. You know, I thoroughly go through it. Whether I use all of it, I don't know. You know, cool. If I don't, there's more for next time. But I will thoroughly research what I want to talk about, And sometimes I'll come up with some really things I think that are really cool. There are times I've come up with stuff that I thought was really cool, and then I'll pose the question to the person, and you see their reaction. It's like, well, that didn't go as planned. You roll with it, and it see what somebody really gets excited about. I interviewed Daughtry a couple weeks back, and there's a couple times where like you see his face just light up, and it's like, all right, we're gonna roll here.
Oh yeah,
roll here. And that's the fun part. And certain times, depending on who it is, you see them kind of downturn. You're like, okay, how can we pick this back up and keep rolling and figure out where they want to go? You just got to find what makes somebody tick and somebody work well. I'll give an example. Dave Navarro. I interviewed him a couple years ago in person. He walks into the room, and you can tell the minute he walks in, he did not want to do the interview. Why he got booked to do the interview? Why his management was like, "Oh yeah, Dave will do it. It's
send Dave.
Yeah, send Dave. It'll be fun." It was Jane's Addiction tour. He comes in, and we start talking Jane's Addiction. They just put out a single, and he has no interest in doing this interview. Like, there's no interest in talking about Jane's Addiction, what's going on musically, and blah blah blah. The minute, and I can see it's dragging, it's turning, and all this. So I'm like, all right, I know what I got to do. I switched it over to Ink Masters, his show on Spike TV at the time. The minute I did that, we're off to the races. There's no stopping it. Like, he cannot stop talking. He's excited. I'm like, well, there you go. All right. I found his line. There it is. Draw it. We're just going to keep right there and don't go below it. Don't go above it. We're just going to walk this the entire rest of the way during the interview. You just got to find it because he didn't want to talk about Jane's Addiction music. He didn't care. He's like, oh, we got a new single. Blah, whatever.
That's not a thing either, where it's like you don't always have to just be promoting the record or the single. It's like when you're trying to get personality and dare I say charm or anything like that, or just entertainment. Like sometimes you are talking about other things. I got it. There's a message. I know we're over our hour. You got a couple more minutes? Okay, good. I'm enjoying this. I think this is fun. There's some learning going on here too. Cindy said, whoever does the interview most of the time will not bother listening to prior interviews or podcasts and will accidentally ask the same question somebody's already asked. But that's tough, though, because often when you're in different markets, you are being asked the same question over and over again. And like if a band does have a new record or a new singer or a new tour coming up, it's like everyone wants their own take on that. And I think, as you're saying, like you might take that in a different direction, but like those basic seed questions of what's actually going on. Like how many times have you probably talked about, the pandemic or COVID or like what, like that's probably been pretty popular the last 6 months.
Yeah. And I try not to do those questions a whole lot, especially now the more months we pass on.
We're past it in a way, but it's
we are. If it gets brought up, in casual conversation, then we'll go down the line and we'll talk about it. But I try to get away from it. But to go to Cindy's point, I'll take that extra time and I'll go back and I'll listen to other interviews just for the purpose of finding what's been asked, how can I work ways around those things, and where are they, again, seeing a bright light, and where's the dim lights in terms of what are they really liking, what are they not liking to talk about? Because I don't want to talk about things they're not interested in, because the minute I do that, the conversation's dead. They're tuning out. You know what I mean? I've seen this happen. We talked about in this interview where I had one person and they tuned out and they said the one line I knew was the tune out moment. I'm like, well, this interview's shot. It's dead. It's still light of day. So, I do that for myself personally, just so I can make sure that one, the person I'm interviewing has a good time. Two, you, the audience who's watching or listening, has a good time, well. But going back to it, please, if you're in a band, have some fun. Whether, and again, going back to Jared Leto, he had a kid who was, 19, 20, doing his very first radio interview. Take the time and think about who that person could be that's on the other line, on the other end, doing that interview, and think about that for a second. Could this be the person's very first interview? And are they just nervous? Are they not fully prepared? It happens, just take that second and think about where they're at in their career. The old phrase, think about, you don't know what a person's day is like, so treat everybody well, because they could just be having the crappiest day. Think about that person having that interview. Could be the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, it could be just yeah. There's a lot of variables. One more from Cindy here actually. It's a question. Is there any chance before the interview that both sides can hash out a skeleton outline of how the interview is going to go?
I have had. It doesn't really happen that way, and I hate those types of interviews. Only reason being because then it kind of feels there's no life to it, if you will. There's no excitement. It feels almost fake in that way. Because I hate when I get into interviews and like this right here. You and I talked a little bit before we got on, but we didn't talk about what we were getting to in here. So there wasn't like we didn't already talk about it and then try to recreate the magic again.
No, but that leads to another point I wanted to add on that, because before, well, again, pull back the curtain a little bit. Before, there's a couple things where it's like this topic, inbounds, out of bounds. Do you ever go over some of those things, like things that you are okay to cover, or things that might be too close or sensitive, and just avoid? Because I feel for people when because you see it all the time on YouTube now, but it's like when people get asked questions, they do not want to answer.
No, and I do. That is something I have done a lot over the course of my career, and no matter even on these types of interviews, because I host a thing called the Styles Cast, which is a video chat. But I will do a thing before we ever go live or before we ever tape anything, video, phone, anything. I will always ask, is there anything that you want to just specifically cover? Is there anything you really want me to hype on and go after? And is there anything that you do not want us to talk about? Like completely off grounds, do not go after, do not, if we even get close to this topic, pull back, do not go there. I always ask that as a common courtesy. Not everyone will do that, but I try to do that because I also want you to be comfortable, and I also want you to know that I'm not going to go and try to pull a blabbermouth moment or a Loudwire moment here. I'm not going for the shock value. I want you to be comfortable, and I don't want you to think that I'm coming in for that.
Well, it's the same team idea.
Yes.
And I'm a firm believer that the worst thing you can do to someone is humiliate them. And the idea, if you were to pull something like that and they feel humiliated or they feel like they're being made fun of, or it's just because a lot of personal stuff too, because like everyone's got their laundry out these days online. It's like you can't do anything. And the idea for someone to pull a fast one and think that it's funny, or to think they had, because I think Ellen got dragged across the coals on some of that stuff, some of the things that she would do to her guests. And think that it's funny. Like there's one like, oh, so-and-so pregnant. Let's both have a glass of wine now, and then they don't want to do that, and then it turns into this big thing, and it's like that's not cool.
No.
Like it's not fun for the guest.
Yeah. Like, and I don't want to do that to anybody. And then plus you as the interviewer, it's not. You lose credibility in that way. You really do, and then people look at you and go, booking interviews, whether it be a band management or a PR firm, and they go back and they look at certain things you've done, or they can, reach out to other resources that people you've talked to. Because again, like we talked earlier in this chat, the business is small all around. Doesn't matter what branch of it is. It's small, and people know people, and they can find out things, and you get a reputation. That reputation will follow you, and that's the last thing I want to do is have that reputation. He's going to embarrass our guests or our clients in whatever interview. I had I won't say who or what. I reached out for an interview for a particular entity, celebrity, if you will, and their agent, who's handling the PR, was like, "Well, what kind of questions are going to ask in this particular thing?" So I had to go back to the question that Cindy asked earlier about hashing it out. Now, this wasn't the entire interview laid out, but it was, here's a couple ideas of things I kind of want to go after, but broad strokes here. This isn't the entire interview, and then I finished up the end. I'm like, we're not going to go after this, that, or this, and I'm not here to, make the person, feel ashamed or call anybody out. This is just a general thing I want to do, and this is what I'm looking for. Oh, and by the way, we've talked already to this person before once. Here, go back and listen to the interview so you can have proof of what we've done.
I have to ask. This is kind of I don't say a random question. Mm-hmm. When people swear on the radio, does the station get fined? How does it work? Well, not saying there's a gray area for artists to swear.
There is no gray area. There is. Don't do it.
Is there a list of words online where you're just like, you can't say
This
these?
is why I pre-tape everything. This is why everything gets pre-taped. Like when you guys came in last time, I pre-taped the whole thing and then aired it the next day.
Not just because it's Dane.
Love you, Dane.
Dude, love you, Dane.
Yeah, but
yeah.
no, we can get fined. The word "can" is there because really it comes down to if it gets reported.
By a listener?
Yeah, it has to get reported. Basically, that's what it comes down to. It basically has to get reported, and if it does, then an investigation happens, and if that, if it's proven that that a swear happened, then there you go.
And so, like, context doesn't count. It's just like, did it slip?
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to the judgment. The FCC in the United States has the final judgment on it. I mean,
and this, again, just the severity of these fines.
I have never been fined, so I can't say.
You don't even know the ballpark. $500, $5,000, $20,000, $87. Like, what is it? Like, is it? I don't know why you're laughing. I'm curious. Fines are fines. Again, I'm basing it off of parking fines too in Toronto, which are incredibly crazy when you see the tickets for stuff. But I'm just curious.
What's a parking fine in Toronto?
Oh, like park in the wrong spot, you're looking at $500.
Oh no, we're talking buku dollars. Buku dollars for that, man. The FCC does not play around when it comes to fines for anything, for that matter. The FCC does not play around. They love fines. When they find somebody, they love
it's a pizza day in the office and they find somebody. No, I'm curious too.
The whole department. What are you talking about?
I'm curious too, just because like if bands don't realize the severity of some of these things, because it's somebody else's job.
Yeah, you can get that person in trouble. You can
get
the station in trouble. You can get the PD in trouble. You can get a lot of people in trouble. Which again, I mean, if I have it my way, I pre-tape the stuff. That's just how I do it because it's easier that way.
Smart.
Well, and also, I mean, radio listenership has also changed. Let's take a look at that right there. Okay, so the average radio listener is not going to sit there and listen to you and I chat on the physical radio for a half hour straight with music intertwined. They're just not going to do that. So, you and I could sit here and chat for an hour and 13 minutes, and then I could break that up into like minute-long segments like Lou does on Hard Drive. Air that over the course of a week as you and my guest. You get more exposure from that. I podcast the whole thing in one shot, share that link. It gives you more exposure, gives me more exposure. There's more benefits to doing it that way than a one and done situation than we used to do. You know what I mean? Like whether it be you sitting here for an hour and doing this chat or doing a 10-minute studio session and you play 2 songs. I rather big bulk, tape it, break it down, put it out over the course of time, and do it that way. It makes more sense. The listener gets a better benefit because I can break it down in like minute-long, 2-minute-long segments that somebody can be more involved in and can pay attention to. You know what I mean? That they have their attention span can handle. So, I mean, that's why I also make the joke, a 15-minute Tool song is not good for radio. The attention span of a listener is not that good. It's not going to hold out.
Well, I heard jokes in radio that it was good because they gave you time to go use the bathroom or eat a sandwich or.
The only, when I used to DJ bars back in the day, I used to always throw on OAR's That Crazy Game of Poker. The live version that's like 14 minutes long. That was my bathroom and get a beer break song. I would go get a bucket of beer, hit the bathroom, and get back.
You're good.
Hit the bathroom, hit the bar, get a bucket of beer, get back to the DJ booth, and I'd be set for the night. Like that was my interchanging, like getting ready to change things over to dance music.
Half joking about long songs. I was just curious, and I looked for a playlist on Spotify for like longest songs.
Oh God.
And yeah, you get some Grateful Dead and Iron Butterfly, and yeah, you get some wicked stuff on there. Where you're like, really, that original cut is 37 minutes long?
I know.
Are you kidding me? Did it fit on a record?
can you revisit the side one of an LP for God's sakes? I mean,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Going back to, we're gonna do a long song because it's cool.
It's all jamming.
There's an art to it. Don't get me wrong. Jam bands have their place, and I am a fan of all kinds of music. God, I love jazz music. That is my cool down music. At the end of the day, I will sit down and listen to jazz music. And there are 16-minute and 27-minute long songs. Stan Getz, my lord, that man could jam for hours on end on live versions. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's always good.
No, there's going to be some low points in there.
Yes, there are. There are sometimes you're like, am I still listening to the same thing? Really?
It's still going.
It's still going? How is he not? Did somebody leave the band and go off and go to the bathroom or get a drink or something?
Well, even with that too, with some of those songs that were recorded on tape, and like you had like 20 minutes or half an hour, I think, or like even if you're running at double speed, you might have like 10 or 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And to how some of these songs put together, it's like I don't understand it, because I feel like you had to run the second machine, right, and then like overlap them for a second, and then let it rock on the other 24, and you're just like, like it's that kind of stuff where like if you screw that up, not to downplay the current state of audio engineering, but I've had to put tape on a machine once, and it was during school, and I kind of said, I'm not going to do this like ever again. They're like, I know, but we have a machine and I'm going to give you, 5 out of 5 marks for it. But like we don't have engineers actually aligning tape machines and making sure the console's running and everything. Like it kind of ties into the next, like I'll try to wrap this up here soon. But
no, dude, you're fine. You're fine.
But like when you started, probably a lot of things were analog, and you talk about going back and forth between decks and stuff. It's like the technology that's changed, and like the amount of things you needed to know hardware wise, and all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, well, this is the new system, and now all these things are gone.
So when I got into the business, going back to the deck, the studio that we had at WNCD was CD to CD, 4-cart 8-track machine. There was 4 carts for an 8-track. That's what all the station sweepers and the commercials were put on. Were actual 8-tracks, single cut 8-tracks, slap it in, hit the cue button on the board to fire one cart, and keep it going. CD to CD. God help you if that CD started skipping because there was a scratch. You'd have the Black Sabbath War Pigs remix going on the air. But you would have to then pull the next hour of music. Each CD had a number for it, so you had to go find the number. Okay, I'm playing cut 4 off of CD 817. All right, set that over there. Get your list going. That's how we had to do it, like you said. And by the way, for my 9th grade English class, I actually my mentor made me do a commercial, because I had to make a commercial for our English class, but I actually did it at the studio, and I had to splice tape, so I know all about that. God, it sucks so bad. But to the technology effect, so everything's technology based. I mean, everything runs off of a computer. I mean, I can log in right now and look at the studio running live right now. It's all computerized. Everything's running off the computer. My very first station in Youngstown, Ohio, we actually had a broadcast tower on the site of our buildings, and that tower took a lightning strike. That lightning strike fried our system. So it knocked the actual system that runs everything off the air. So all the electronics are gone now. We don't have any songs.
Like everything.
We're not running off of what was then called Scott Studios on the air. Like the actual automation system's dead. So I had to put in a couple calls and had some friends bring me my DJing CDs. And we had to take stuff from the engineering room and set up CD machines. And we had one person in the production room pulling together commercials and setting them up in a single deck on Adobe, mixing it down, sending it to the studio so you could play off of Adobe the entire commercial break when it was necessary. Other than that, I'm looking at the music log that we had printed up off the music scheduling software and running as best we can, song to song, off of CDs for almost 12 hours straight overnight.
That is hardcore.
Until we can get the automation system up and running.
I can only, because the first thing when you said that the station got hit by lightning, I'm like, yeah, giant antenna. I imagine they get hit all the time.
They do. In Springfield, we had towers on our property. They weren't so much directly in line to everything. People who work at the building still.
Are they usually off property?
Most of the time they are. Sometimes
for that reason.
But there was days when Katie and I, when we were doing our morning show at the time on QLZ, if there's a storm coming in, you could hear before the lightning, before the tower.
Oh no!
So you'd be sitting there, and before you go in there, you hear in the room, and you look outside, you see
coming.
Wow.
Coming. No, I think about that situation where you're talking like, and part of me is like half laughing because you got your huge case of CDs and stuff, and you're just like, and you thought I was gonna get rid of these. You're like, nope. It's times like this. But just when you get all hands on deck, and no pun intended, but just like everybody trying to make it work and put it back together, because to me that's the definition of being pro. It's like, you need to be good now. We need to solve this problem right now, and like get it sorted. Because if you're not, like, again, I don't understand, but like if your station's not playing music, are you getting fined, or are you just losing ad revenue, or is it like
you're losing ad revenue? Because if something's scheduled during that time and you're not airing it, then you're losing that revenue if you can't make it up within a certain time frame.
Okay.
There's a lot of elements that go into ad revenue. Fine wise, it all just depends. You're not going to get fined because obviously it's something you can't control. That's a little different. If you're doing everything within your power to get back on the air, they understand that. You're not going to get slapped.
Yeah, because I've heard stories with PD saying like, oh, and it went silent. Like the station went silent overnight for a bit, or something happened. I'm like, I don't know if that's a big deal, because in my world, I'm like, well, at least no one's swearing, so there's nothing going on.
Right here, we'll get a phone call if we go off the air. There is a thing called a silent sense.
Oh, okay.
That will give me a call. Call me if it's 2:00 in the morning. It will call me. If it's 2 PM, I'll get a phone call. If I don't have the radio on sitting next to me over here, I will get a phone call, and it will be like, "Hey, guess what?
Nothing's going on."
It'll be an automated message saying, the call letters alarm, and that just signals to me. And then I got to run over to the radio. Now, give you a little insight, a little behind the curtain. I'll run over to this radio here, and if I can hear static, that means the transmitter is off. There's no power to it. So that could mean the transmitter turned off. There's no power at all at the tower site. So that's a rough day. Now, if there's no static whatsoever on the thing and it's just silent, that means there's something wrong with the automation system getting to the tower. Either the automation system's off, or the chain that takes the automation system from the studio to the tower, something's wrong there. So I got to look at, start doing. That's my first deduction of what's wrong and what do I got to do next.
No, it's crazy, because like we take a lot of our equipment for granted that it just works.
Oh yeah.
And on the production side, there's hiccups all the time. But that being said, I've had one power surge. Again, I got $1,000 power supply down here that usually would take. But I've had it where I've been working and I've seen the light bulb get brighter beside me, and then my circuit breaker or fuse pop on my power voltage regulator down here. I remember thinking that would have taken everything out. The drives, the computer interfaces, it would have taken everything with it. But the idea of like, you are literally a lightning rod. Like,
oh, yeah. And when I worked in Florida, I was at the station tower site. We had all 4 of our studios, or all 4 of our signals based out of one tower. And something went wrong with one of them during a lightning storm. And I'm literally on the ground, which is completely flat. There's nothing else but a fence, a building, tower, and me walking from my car to the tower in the middle of this lightning storm. I'm like, and I've got and dumb me, I didn't think about it beforehand, but like it's dark out there, so I've got to take a flashlight. I've got a big, gigantic metal rod flashlight. Like I'm like, oh, this is gonna end so well. This is great.
Just write good words about me.
Yeah. Someday, I hope you all remember me well. Well, which is funny because I always joke. I told my wife too. I was like, it's like the day I die, I was like, I don't really want a funeral service. I was like, here's what you need to do. You can hold something for me. But I'm like, you pick 5 people, and not even 5 people that liked me. Just pick 5 people that know me. They get to say whatever they want about me, good, bad, and different. I don't care. 5 people, that's it, and then you're done. Go drink. I'm like, that's it. I don't care.
I have one more. I have 2 more questions / topics I'd love to chat about. I'm having a great time on this. Again, I really appreciate your time. The idea of a band with a great song, but the production's lacking or the mix is lacking, versus an okay song, but the production's like awesome. Well, does the production matter that much? Does the song matter that much for you?
Okay, so everyone's going to tell you different. If you talk to Oz from JJO, he might tell you different than me. So back before I got into radio itself, I was originally going to go to school for production and be a producer. That was kind of like my idea, but the radio bug kind of took over. Radio became the director.
Good choice.
Well, and I can't play music or anything. I couldn't tell you how to read a damn note.
Neither can I. No one's found out yet.
Yeah. So radio became a better idea, a better path for me. But I'm such a snob when it comes to production. I am so bad about it. I will nitpick stuff to a T. My wife sometimes hates when we listen to certain things. Like we'll buy an album and she'll be like, and she'll see a look on my face as we're driving in the car. She's like, you're so picking this apart, aren't you? I'm like, it's hi-hat. No. You hear that? His vocal is buried too much in this part. Like, I'll pick things apart. That's just how I am. Especially live albums. Oh, I'm such a snob on live albums when it comes to production.
Live or live albums?
Actual live with audience.
Okay, yeah.
Full-fledged live albums. Not live. Especially if you're doing, a real live album with a crowd and you're doing overdubs, you suck. I hate you.
I love when I see live album and then they list like 6 other studios and you're like, hey, what? Excuse me? Because if it's live, it should be the venue and then maybe where they remixed it later. But like,
there was one band and a band I truly do love, and I won't mention them, but they came out with a live album. I bought said live album. And it sounded really good. But then, again, my production ear, if you will, I'm listening to it and I'm like, you know what's interesting here is when the guy talks to the crowd, you can tell it's the live vocal. But when he's singing, you can tell it's the overdub from the studio.
Yeah.
And they mixed it to try to overcome it and make it sound like it was a live vocal from the stage when it's totally not.
You cannot fake the amount of phasing that especially if it's a handheld 58 and they're swinging it around most of the time. They'll gate it, they'll clean it up, but a vocals, it's gonna phase all over, and that's okay because it sounds right.
Yeah, no.
But I hear you.
Off this, I'll tell you who it is, and then you can go listen to it and tell me what you think. Because I want to know, personally, I want to know that I'm right on this.
I'm not going to doubt it, because again, it's I've ruined my lovely wife. I've ruined production for her too, because she'll start picking things apart, and again, it's a blessing and a curse when you know production. Mm-hmm. And to be able to turn that off, and probably the same with you. Like the first time you listen to something, we can't listen without production ears because it's the freshest it's going to ever be. And if you're really into film, the first time you watch it, you're watching edits, you're watching lighting, you're listening for Foley, like you're listening to all these little things that other people might even be picking up on. But like you don't get a second chance at that for production, because after you listen the first time, like you've already heard it.
So funny right there, real quick. So, and I'll go back to your question, but I have two voice parts of a film that's out right now called Cruel Hearts. My buddy Paul Osborne did. By the way, cheap plug. It's on Amazon Prime. Go watch it. But
I have Prime.
It's called Cruel Hearts, and so I have 2 voice parts in it. I recorded it at one of my radio station studios, and I did like 10 takes of each of the 2 parts that I did in the film, and I sent them to my buddy Paul. Now, I didn't see the film until well after it was out, and when my parts came up in the film, I sat there and because I've never worked with how my voice would intertwine with how I record it and how it got injected into a film. So I'm sitting there going, how does that sound? How does that sound? And my wife's looking at me like, really? And don't get me wrong, I was happy to hear myself, but I'm like, in the film, I'm like, oh,
but you're curious, yeah.
Right, but I'm like, how is it going to come across?
They're going to make me sound.
But to go back to your point, bad production versus good production. It's kind of tough because if you have a great song and the production's crap, it's not going to sound good on the air, no matter what processing we have on the radio station, because every radio station has processing, just so you know. No matter what your processing is on your car, whether you have treble up by 3, bass up by 4, we have our own processing on the station. And it's different by format. It's different by preference of either the PD or the engineer of that station, of what the processing sounds like. My vocal mic per station is different processing as well. So it's going to go through processing, and even if your production sucks, my processing isn't going to save your bad production.
Yeah, because there's your mix, there's the mastering on top of it, and then there's what radio can do to your song too.
Right.
Because it seems to slam it a bit more.
And it's so interesting too, because like you'll see certain bands, depending upon who produces it, who masters it, and you can tell too, at least on our end, because I'll get it and I'll open the song up, and you'll see the wavelengths in like terms of like how loud they are, and if they're lower, and if they don't look like a brick,
audio sausage.
Yeah, then you can tell like where the processing is on that and where the production is. Like it ain't a brick, then you're like, there's some pure definition then in the song if it isn't a brick. But
and is that better on your end to have a more dynamics, or is the audio sausage better for what you're doing, where it's already kind of smashed?
I think it just depends. I mean, if when I get the song and I open it, and the thing is just like, and it's like peaked up and it's over, and I can't see even a little bit of a gap to the top, you know what I mean? Then, now mind you, I'll lower the volumes before I put it into the system, because my system will normalize a song and do a little bit of extra gating as well before it goes in. But even then, if I can't see even a little bit of a gap on the top and the bottom, it's like, oh, that's a little loud. Come on, guys. Come on. Like, what are you going here for? Are you trying to compensate for something? I'll never forget. I won't say who it was, but this particular band had released a new album, and I'm in a van driving the guys from POD from a venue to the station I worked at to do an acoustic set, and Wub from POD is in the front seat with me in the car, and we're listening to the album. And he's like, yo, everybody, shut up, and he turns it up, and he's like, oh man, that crunch is too hard. They overprocessed this record, man. And he's like listening to it, he's nitpicking it. And I'm like, I'm not the only one that does it.
No, there's so many of us that do that. Again, it's a blessing and a curse when it comes to production. But
so yeah, I mean, production, it definitely helps you. But I mean, if you have a great song and crap production, what is it? The guys in Crossfade, that first album, Crossfade did it. For those of you who don't know Crossfade, look up the song Cold. And that first album, they did all at home, and then they get signed by Columbia. And all they did with it is they remastered the song. They remastered the record. They didn't go back and re-record. They remastered it, and the difference is there in the remastering. And I'm glad they remastered it because it sounds way better.
It just tightens it up, yeah.
Yeah, it tightened it up way more, and it helped them out because that when they came out with Cold, it is a much better version than the version that was originally done. So,
yeah, no, it can. I think the story was with the Killers. Like their first run of the record was like 50,000, and then like they blew up, and then they went and fixed a few things because a lot of that first record was like just done at their, one of the guys' houses in Las Vegas. And like, again, that's what the legend is with it. Because I remember when, I think it was Mr. Brightside, hearing the one mix, and then girlfriend at the time had the record. And I remember listening to, she listened to it a lot, and then I remember like hearing it later and being like, that sounds really different.
Right.
Than what the record that she had, like the pressing that she had. And yeah, so it's not uncommon for things to kind of get touched up when things are happening. And so go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, well, look at like My Darkest Days. I mean, you listen to the demos and the songs they cut before they got signed and what ended up on the first record. I mean, it's very different between the two songs.
Where it gets to, yeah.
Yeah, where it ends up getting to.
Actually, interesting kind of side thing here. It's just like this day and age, the idea that, because Kanye did it, he put his record out, he wasn't happy with some of the mixes on it, he pulled it down, and then he put it back up. The idea these days, where you couldn't do that when you were pressing to a record or a cassette or a CD or 8-track or whatever. It's like,
right.
But because everything's just kind of, in the digital space these days, and the hard copy, it's like, and not to say that it's less desirable, but it's just like when you look at the numbers between streaming and between the hard copies, the idea where like that hi-hat, if it's still bugging us, we can just open up the track again and just make the change and then put it back up. I see that happening. I like the snare drum. I like it. I think it's cool. I know I'm in the minority there. I know that if I was to vote, I would be voted off the island. But I hear you. I hear you, though. I just think it's the mastering is like, that's my issue with that record.
And I get what you're saying in terms of the digital side stuff. I mean, I'm still old school. I love a physical copy of the record. You can't see it, but on the other side of this basement, there are...
I wouldn't doubt it.
My wife's bane of existence in terms of anytime we move, boxes and boxes of CDs. Again, going back to that whole, when you're going to need it, it comes into play. It has happened. I've used them. I use them in every location I've moved to. In some way, shape, or form, I have. And whether I use them personally or for the station, it has always come into play somewhere. So I'm glad to still have a physical copy. There's a great record store here in town I go to in Bloomington Normal and still frequent, whether I buy used records or new ones when they come out. I also, don't get me wrong, I do have a subscription to Amazon Music, so I do have a streaming service that I subscribe to, but I go all angles when I get music.
Well, you need the physical copies for what you do. Like, that's your ultimate backup. Mm-hmm. And it's like that.
My wife laughs at me all the time too. I love the smell of a brand new record, and when I mean like a CD. Like I will.
That's a moment.
I will open a CD and I will get the ink. I will get that booklet and go.
Brings me back.
Oh, that smell of the fresh printed ink, man. She laughs at me when I do it. She just looks at me like a weirdo. I'll do it in the car with no one.
Be a weirdo. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm like, man, I just love that smell. And I love reading the liner notes. I mean, you can't really get that. I mean, depending upon if you buy the record on digitally, you might be able to get the liner notes. But I love having those liner notes.
The fans who appreciate good booklets and liner notes, it's like, and that's one of the things that we've definitely fallen short the last couple of releases on things, because there's a lot more production to get all that stuff together, and it just, there's usually hiccups and hurdles that just keep that from happening. But it's like, I do feel guilty not including that, because if you're going to go that far, like, just finish it.
I appreciate what you guys did for Tense with the little photos you guys put in there, the hand signed photos and stuff.
Oh, little thank yous in there.
Yeah,
I thought that'd be fun.
That was cool. I mean, well, yeah, you didn't have like a little liner booklet. You still gave us something cool, physical to have with the CD if we bought the CD.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, we thought it'd be fun, and again, let's just try something. Again, the worst thing that happens is like, everyone's like, "Oh, that's dumb. Okay, we won't do that again."
I see Cindy posted something about it being priceless if you take care of the physical CD of artists that are legendary. A funny story. So years ago, ICP and Sing Clown Posse, they had put out the album The Great Malenko. They were on they were on Hollywood Records, which was owned by Disney. Okay. So for whatever reason, Hollywood signs ICP, not realizing who ICP is. They put out Great Malenko. Disney goes, whoa. we are not having them on Hollywood Records. You know, we release Disney music. We are not releasing ICP, Juggalos and Clowns and all that. So they pull the Great Malenko. Like one day of release, they pull the record off store shelves. I go to the record store and buy a copy of it at the moment, because then they pulled it off store shelves and then they scrapped all of them. And then they re-released the record on Island Records with a couple bonus tracks now. I end up keeping that thing sealed until about 2 years ago, and I sold it for like a couple $100.
Jeez.
I was like,
no, it's funny because like I get how their branding. So it was Hollywood Records?
It was Hollywood at the time. Yeah, Hollywood happened for one album, released Great Malenko, pulled it after one day of release because Disney was like, why? Who signed them?
But the thing is, like, looking at the spreadsheet, because they're one of the top grossing acts. Like, they're up there.
Yeah, I saw them once live just because I wanted to stay. I saw them live.
We were supposed to play with them this summer. Rock USA. That like we saw that and Steel Panther. I was like, and Slipknot. I was like, okay, everything is good. This is the year.
Once live, they played at Hooligans in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and I was like, I gotta go see it live just so I can finally say I saw it and I witnessed it. And I stood back at the soundboard. They come out, Fago spraying everywhere, and I saw like 5 songs. I'm like, I'm going home. I'm done. 3 days later, I have a rock show at Hooligans, and I get there early before doors open just to banner up the place and talk with the owners and stuff like that, and hang out and see the band. Can't remember who was playing, but I'm walking around and I look up and I'm like, oh my God, the Raptors were caked in soda. Caked in soda and confetti. And as I'm sitting there, headlining bands on, I got my camera, and it's a junk old Sony camera, not like a big professional camera, but I'm snapping shots and stuff. And I feel
oh, that's gross.
It got so warm in the room that the soda was starting to loosen up top and started to drip on everybody in the whole venue.
That's rotten, but also awesome because at least you know where it came from, which is ICP show.
True. but it was like soupy at that point, like dripping down. It wasn't like actual soda. It was soupy now.
Oh, that's nasty.
Yeah.
Well, that's back with someone pulling that record and being like, we're not releasing this. It's like, again, someone just had to walk up to the blackboard or the whiteboard and just be like, this is how much they're gonna make. This is our cut.
Yeah.
Push it through. Like, we're missing out on some money here. but yeah, no, I was excited to see that because I'm just like, there'll be juggalos there. And I met my first juggalo in Seattle, and years ago because we were playing. I think it's called the Showbox.
Okay.
Showbox Theater. And there was this picture on the wall, like a framed picture on the wall backstage, and one of the hands there, she got really mad because they keep covering it up, and it was like a portrait of a juggalo, and I'm like, you're a juggalette, like you're my first juggalo that I've ever met in real life because I'm from Canada and we kind of don't have juggalos up here, but it's just like I just as a subculture, like even go on YouTube and look at the Gathering of the Juggalos, it's just like it is a thing.
It is.
I don't know if I want to go. But like that culture, it's like, it's massive.
I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and in Northeast Ohio in the late 90s to early 2000s, at the peak of ICP, you could not get away from ICP and the Juggalo. They were everywhere. I had so many friends that would paint their face and just go out in normal public. Like, it was insane. And don't get me wrong, I bought the records and I bought into it. I wasn't like that hardcore. I don't have a tattoo or anything like that, but I have friends who are still to this day up from that area that are still into them hardcore, have never let it die. And I'm like, dude, power to you. I mean, like, that is something special right there when you can create that type of culture and following for your artistry. God bless them, man.
Yeah, no, you win because you create something that, when we talked about that P1, P2, P3 ring of fans and stuff, and just like how intense and huge that P1 ring is.
Yes.
Because there's core, then there's hardcore.
What they put out, somebody's gonna buy it.
Yeah, I mean? that's their church. It's there. I'm gonna bug you to do another one of these because I see how long some of our chats are about some of these things. I'm gonna speed through this. Jeremy
Yeah.
has recorded an album at Eclipse Studios in Normal with Eric Nelson. You familiar with his work?
I
Eric
am.
Nelson.
I'm still a relatively new resident to the area. I've only been here about 2 years. Coming up February, I'll be here 2 years. So I'm still new to the area and learning a lot about people and of the area. Now, Eric Nelson, I believe that's a. I want to say I know the name. I'm sorry if I'm blanking on it, but not familiar with the studio. So unfortunately, I do not.
And I'm just blasting through these questions. Rapid fire.
Man.
Cindy's asking, who's your dream person to interview if you haven't already done it? So who's someone on your list to put you on the spot where you're just like, because you've done Tiffany now. You already had your Tiffany interview.
Oh my god, and Tiffany was fantastic. Tiffany ended up that was fantastic. I gotta tell you what, man, she was so much fun to interview. I wouldn't even say nothing against her. I'm not trying to say it was bad, but she wasn't on the list, if you will, if there is a list. I've gotten to interview Jay Muse. That was a lot of fun. A little intimidating at the time, walking into it, just because I'm a huge Jay and Silent Bob fan. One of the big ones I had, if you want to call it a bucket list of interviews, was to interview somebody from Social Distortion. I've done that. Not Mike Ness, but I have interviewed somebody from Social Distortion, so I've been able to knock that off the list. So that was cool. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a bucket list anymore, really, because I called it the bucket list, and okay, if I could get this person, I get that person. But in my head, sometimes I'm like, do I really want that list? Because then if I get these people and it doesn't live up to what I hope it will
There's
be,
the expectations.
You're right. And that interview that I did with I'm blanking on who it was from Social D, but I went into it with a certain expectation, and it lived up, thankfully. It was a great conversation. But you go in, let's pretend if I interviewed Ozzy, you go in with a certain expectation of how it might go, and if it doesn't end up that way, it's crud, man. And then,
was it him? Was it me? Was it us?
Right, and then you go with it the rest of your days, and you're like, man, don't meet your idols or something like that. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I've met Ozzy before. Didn't interview him, but I met him. I'm cool with that. I'll walk away.
I'll take that.
I don't need to interview the guy.
No, it is tough because you think you nailed it. It's just you come at some of these things with expectations because you're excited about it, and not to drag it into this vein, but just I regret never being able to see Soundgarden because Cornell passed before I could, and it's there's other musicians where I got to see them, and I got to see other musicians and other bands and stuff.
I reached out to Chris Cornell's manager. Okay, well, the backstory: Chris Cornell's manager the night he died.
Wow.
This is before we knew he died. I reached out to Chris's manager because I was headed to Rock on the Range that weekend that they were going to play. And I reached out. I had a friend of mine who knew Chris's manager, and I reached out to Chris's manager, not to get an interview, but just to be able to meet him and get liners for the radio station. And I had emailed them that evening. It was 6, 7 o'clock at night Central. Be like, hey, I'm going to be at Rock on the Range. I just need 5 minutes of Chris's time. All I need. Here's what I need. Reach out to me. And then I wake up 12 hours later to the news. It's
what just happened?
Whoa, that's a little surreal, Yeah. And that's one of the bands I never got to see live. Same thing. I never got to see them live.
Yeah. And it was that story. It's because again, we don't think of that when you send an email or I'll call them later, and they're not there anymore, sort of thing. And I remember being on tour with Dead Set, and I remember we got the news because we're up till 3 a.m. anyways because we're finishing shows, and just the vibe of the hotel room was this is not good. Tomorrow when we wake up, everything's different because Cornell was one of those guys, one of those artists, and I would go on the record to say I don't feel like some of these legends are being replaced.
No, they never will. And it's not because they're legends to us of our generation. You and I believe, are relatively the same age.
Yeah.
It's not even because of that. It's because they are who they are. Those people who grew up with like Jim Morrison or Jimi Hendrix, you can legitimately say those people are legends and they won't be replaced. And it's not because of that generation. You and I can say the same thing about those people. I remember the same thing. I woke up that morning getting a phone call from my morning guy, QLZ Mo, telling me about it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I had to wake up, finish packing my stuff for Rock on the Range because I was leaving that day anyways. I remember it was a Thursday. Drive to the station, fix the programming for the day, then go drive to Rock on the Range where the entire mood of that weekend. And I'll never forget that weekend because that weekend sucked because that was the weekend we got evacuated 5 times from the venue because of storms. There'd be sirens going off and like, please go back to your cars. Or for us in the radio tent, we'd have to go to a certain location because of the storm coming in.
We couldn't.
It wasn't safe, and it was the whole weekend was that way. The whole vibe, man. Just driving in, listening to a retrospective CD that I had from him, listening to a Sirius XM special on him, and the whole weekend vibe, man, was just so rough.
I can't even imagine because that's a legend with gone too soon.
Yeah, I bought the posters that weekend for that show that they were listed on. They still sold them that weekend. I have them. I haven't framed them or anything, and I'll never sell them. But it's just like, oh man,
no,
it was rough.
Remember, Soundgarden they played the Phoenix here, and I think the Phoenix capacity, I might be wrong, but it's one of those ones. It's like 700-800. It's where you can be close enough to see people's facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my good friends got to see them at Amphitheater here. Budweiser stage now. He was part of the people that could get in to go watch their sound check. And it's like, I never got to see any of that stuff. And it's just like, my wife and I, it's like we go to concerts. And Blur was one of my bands growing up. Like I wasn't an Oasis guy, I was a Blur guy. And so when Daniel went over to do Gorillaz, it's like, I love that. And it like dawned on me when I was watching them live. I'm like, I got to see him. That's the guy.
I grew up, I was an Oasis guy. My very first show was Oasis during the Be Here Now tour. And I will never forget. So my mentor in the business offered to take me. Dom offered to take me. Young kid, I'm 14 at the point. My dad's like, I don't know if I want you to go to a show yet, blah, blah, blah. We're still relatively getting to know Dom. He's bringing you into the radio. And I'm like, Dad, you don't understand. The brothers are fighting. This could be the You know how big this band is to me. Let me go. So finally convinced him, and I ended up being able to go to the show and get to see them. And it was great because that show, first concert ever, my first ever laminate. I got my first ever Lanny that tour. I had an all-access Oasis pass.
That is awesome.
And I'm like, yeah.
Please tell me you still have it.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. I think we've all got a bin of stuff like that, where we're just like our laminates and stuff like that.
Yeah, the first awesome. 10 shows I have in like a photo album, and then after that there's just a bin of stuff everywhere. All my laminates. But I still want to get my laminates framed, like some of my laminates, my not my satin passes, but my laminates that I want to get framed. Like some of my favorite shows and my more memorable shows that I've done and things that I've seen.
They're cool. Even when we go on short runs and stuff, I'll get little passes done up for everybody. It's only a couple bucks to do it, but it's fun. It makes them feel more official at times, and people appreciate it too when you give it to management or you invite people out. Mm-hmm. They like having those. So.
And even when I did shows at QLZ, I would make those for us. I'd do laminates when we'd have Christmas shows and stuff. I would make ones for those shows for the bands and for the staff, and again, like. The bands that would play those shows, you're like, oh, this is cool and official. I'm like, yeah, it's got our logo. It has, all access pass. It's yours. Like, we have ours. It just makes it official. It's kind of
makes it a team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's got
everybody
that.
in. Everybody's cool. We're all together in on this. I love passes. I mean, not even for the fact of like, oh, I get to walk around like Wayne's World. Go.
It's not bad though. When you're in a cool tour or you're in a cool show, it feels good.
No, it I'll never. So, I used to be very good. One of the guys who used to run security for Shindown. I used to be very good friends with him, and he doesn't work for Shindown anymore. But they're always like family to me. And so, whenever the tour would happen, he would always give me a laminate the God Pass, as it's commonly referred to. It's pass that is for the whole tour, get you into any show. So we're on one show, and we're backstage, we're hanging out, we meet up with him, and he's like, all right, let me get your passes ready. And this is like one of the first times my wife goes to a Shindown show with me. And he's in the back, he's like, all right, Wes, here's yours. What's your wife's name? I say, and he's like, all right. He hands her hers, and she gets her own with her name on it and everything. She just looks and she's like, what the? What? What? I explained to her what it is. And later on in the night, we're just casually, walk past security, flash the
Oh,
back.
yeah, it feels good. It feels good.
Yeah, it feels good. And she's like, I don't belong back here. Why are you letting me back here? No, I don't care what this pass says. No, you do not let me back here. I don't belong back here. Why are you doing like it?
We do. Go with it. Be cool.
Yeah, you belong here. Let it go. It was so funny. It was so cool to see her reaction. Yeah, obviously she got used to it, but it was just funny at that moment to watch her reaction and see her. It was the coolest, and I loved it dearly, and love that camp so much.
Oh, that's awesome.
The God Pass.
No, it's the official time on the tour, and you're in band too, and they get your passes done, and it's just like, okay, you're now part of the team, even just for one day or for 3 weeks, sort of thing.
It's just cool to be a part of that team, And as somebody from the outside in, you never take advantage of it. You go where you're allowed. Don't overstay your welcome. Come in, say hello, do your thing, go back to where you need to be, and don't be around where you're not supposed to be.
Get your first tour out of your system as quick as you can.
Yes, band or friend. That's it. Get in, get out, and get it out of your system. Don't be where you're not supposed to be. I did that early on in my career and got kicked out. Supposed to be by the headlining act. One of the opening acts gave me a pass, and I got kicked out. So I'll never forget one of the times I got a pass. It was from an opening band who was opening for Motley Crue, and you're not allowed to be in this section of the hallway where the Motley Crue guys' dressing rooms are. But it was so funny because that band's dressing room was next to where Tommy Lee's was, and Tommy Lee's dressing room was so great. The sign said, if you're entering Tommy Lee's dressing room, clothing is not an option. And there was a blanket on the ground where you put your clothes.
So you gotta be sure if you want to go in there.
You had to be completely butt naked to get in Tommy Lee's dressing room. I'm like, glad I'm not going down that part of the hallway.
That is not my scene.
But I was like, don't cross this part of the hallway because they will double check you, check you, and look at you weird.
I half joke because eventually I'll write my book, and part of it is the things I've brought friends to. And when friends don't get how to carry themselves at time, and it's just you try not say you try to do something nice, but it's like you try to do something nice and like, oh no, come hang out and see what this is like, and then there's just like free for all, and you're like,
I've done that, and
not what we're here for. I'm at work right now. So
and it's like, you're totally taking advantage of this situation, and no, stop, no, act normal, don't stop that, please.
Yeah, just imagine you're at work. So just be good. Please be good.
Yeah, please be good. Quit acting like an ass and just go with it. Like these are humans.
All right, I've had you almost 2 hours chatting about that.
Yeah, it's all good.
I have the last question, and you can make this one a quick one because there's the cliche question of like, if you could give your 17-year-old self advice, what would you say? But I would say, because so much has probably changed the last 20 years, if you were to give someone 17-year-old wanting to get into radio right now, what's like one piece of advice you would give them?
Don't.
There you have it. That's the same thing I say when people say I want to make records.
Oh no!
So.
If you're gonna get into it, put everything into it. Don't half-ass it. Put everything into it. Be willing to learn. Be willing to the good, the bad, and the ugly. Learn it all. Don't say this is what I want to do and this is it. If you want to be an on-air person, that's great, but don't stop yourself there. I didn't stop myself. That's what I first got into the business as. But I had higher expectations and goals, and I didn't stop there. So don't just say I'm this, because you're never going to be that. This business now, in terms of radio, multiple hats, you're doing multiple things. My list of duties has grown, Now, thanks to COVID, and that's fine. That's part of the gig, you know. Be willing to learn, be willing to adapt. If you don't adapt, you unfortunately get left behind. Change is going to happen whether it benefits you or not.
Just gotta roll with it.
That's the golden rule of life. Change is going to happen whether it benefits you or not. So either you go with it, you learn and you adapt, or get out of the way. I mean,
that's a very nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a lot of people get run over, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of cool in a way, but it's just the true nature of it. Learn, grow, adapt, and be willing to put in the time and the effort. I've seen people in this business come in and they think they get it handed to them on a silver platter. It's like, that doesn't happen like that. I put in the time, put in the effort. I mean, radio is much different now than it was then. So what I did is not what you're going to have to do, but you still have to put in the time. You still have to put in the effort and the work and the lessons. So be willing to do it. If you get asked to do something, don't say no. If you can do it, do it. And if you can't do it, learn how to do it.
You got to commit. You got to commit to it. You got to wake up and just commit to it. And you're bang on. There's going to be good, bad, and ugly. There's going to be laughs. There's going to be tears. There's going to be, what am I doing? There's going to be like, I'm great. There's going to be like, I suck.
Blood, sweat, and tears in this business. I kid you not. I have had to get stitches in the middle of a hurricane thanks to radio. So that could be a story for another podcast. The horrors of radio and the blood, sweat, and tears. I've been body slammed by midgets because of radio. All right.
We didn't even get to the wrestling. I've got to have you back on here because I wanted to chat about wrestling. So maybe next time we'll chat about that.
Oh, there's a lot. So I wonder where you're going to go with that.
Oh, I was curious. All right, I'm going to wrap this up here. It's been 2 hours. This is officially the longest DearBands live that we've run.
Bands. Oh, bands. You're
We did. No, there's still lots of stuff in there because there's gem piece of advices in there for people who are listening. True. And that's what I want. But also, I want to just chat about your side of the world because, like, bands don't get it.
No,
they don't understand it.
Every radio person's different. So everybody takes it in differently about how they choose music. And listen, everybody, you think you deserve a shot. God bless you. You do. You write some music, and I think you deserve it. And not everyone gets their fair shake. There's a lot of every one band. For every one band, there's about 25 of you that want that same slot for that song, and
we're all variables.
Yeah, we're all trying to. I'm trying to produce the best music and content for my audience. If I feel like your song could fit into that flow, you're going to be a part of that flow and help me to produce the best product for the audience. That's basically how I look at it when I pick the songs, and I look at everything with all the research that I get and all the tools I have at my disposal. If it is the best fit for the product I'm putting out to the audience that I'm trying to attract, and you can be a part of it,
we're all good.
Do some business.
All right. Before we head out, anything you want to plug? The podcast.
Yeah. So Instagram and Twitter at Wes Styles Radio. You can link out to all of that there with everything that I've got. I'm on YouTube, Wes Styles Radio on there as well. That's my video podcast, which also becomes an audio podcast after the fact. The Styles Cast, as it's called. A couple of recent guests include Daughtry. Actually, what's great is you guys were my first guest ever on the Styles Cast video version.
We were the guinea pig.
You were the test.
Test subject.
Out StreamYard, which is the service you now use for this.
Thank you for that, by the way. We love this.
So a lot of great guests have been on there. I actually talked to the guys from the Orange Years, which is a great new documentary coming out next month about Nickelodeon. Check out that interview. Some really cool tidbits about, there you go. About Nickelodeon in the 90s, the heyday, Ren and Stimpy and Pete and all that. So
amazing.
Check out that. And I'll have some more coming up. I'm taking this week off because we have had I did 3 interviews 2 weeks ago and 1 last week. I'm cashed.
And then 2-hour chat today. So I appreciate it.
Great, man. It's nice to be on the other side.
You know what? It is different. It is different. Because again, to bring it full circle, I remember I was doing the dishes tonight, and I'm just like, well, what am I gonna, how am I gonna do this? Because Wes knows what he's doing. So.
You know what? It's always easy when you're talking with friends. That's what makes it nice and
that is
a lot of fun.
True.
So if this was just me coming in talking to some rando, it might be a little bit. So, instead, I'm talking to a friend that I've known for several years and somebody I get along with very well, can have great conversations with. So that makes it easy. And I look forward to our next 2-hour conversation.
Oh, it's going to be, we got all the business stuff out of the way, so we can talk about fun stuff.
Oh, God.
We can talk about wrestling. We talk about Ninja Turtles theme song. So.
Wait, what was that again? Say that again?
Ninja Turtles theme song.
That's what I went up to.
Did my homework. Although I don't have it queued up right now, so it's not the same.
I'll have to tell you about my Vanilla Ice experience too.
Okay, next time I will get you on here again.
I'll tell you about my Vanilla Ice experience.
All right, Wes, thank you so much for hanging out tonight. Have a good rest of your evening.
You too, sir.
All right. Well, that was epic. Wes Styles at Rock 96.7. I know him from Bloomington, Illinois. Again, radio personality, known him from half a dozen radio stations, which he said he didn't know if that was good or bad. I can see him laughing in the background right now. Again, if you're in a band, there's lots of great gems in here as far as how the radio world, now he's dancing, it's distracting me, how the radio world works a little bit and some behind-the-scenes stuff. The one thing that I can say for sure, everyone I've met that's a radio personality, they love music. They're in it for the right reasons. It's not just a job to them. They're in it for the right reasons. They go to shows. They like talking to the bands. They like listening to music. And as Wes was saying, they like to still open up the CDs and get that new CD smell. So again, Wes Styles Radio on all socials and the Stylescast podcast. I'll have links to everything below if you're watching the replay on YouTube. And I've got a couple other things in the works right now to make sure that everyone has access to all the socials. Thanks again to everyone that was tuning in tonight and asking questions in the chat. We get to as many of them as we can. It helps the flow of the show as well. All right, that's my time for tonight. Thanks again. I'm just making sure I got this queued up here. Thanks again, everyone, for hanging out tonight. Talk to you later.